this is a guest we've had in the middle of the coronavirus pandemic. One of the scientists that has not only worked, a virologist and worked as a politician, he has written books on the subject of pandemics, his book, False Pandemics. Why are we going to have this conversation? Why is this really important? I don't know. Would you be nervous? Like, it's like almost like the opening of a movie where the head or former head of the CDC says, yeah, this bird flu thing that hasn't happened since the dawn of man jumped from a bird into a human being, I'm pretty sure it's going to happen. And probably the best way it's going to happen is if we build it ourselves. That'd be a weird opening to a movie. It'd be even stranger if you watch it on your own television set, like we all did this week.
Could we be on the verge of another pandemic, and one that could be even worse than the one caused by coronavirus? This time it could actually be bird flu. Former CDC Director Robert Redfield, who helped oversee our country's response to COVID, says it is definitely time to take this more seriously.
Yes, Brian, I really do think it's very likely that we will at some time, it's not a question of if, it's more of a question of when, we will have a bird flu pandemic. And as you mentioned, unfortunately, bird flu has, when it does enter humans, has a significant mortality, probably somewhere between 25 and 50% mortality. So it's going to be quite complicated. Since 2019, we've had a progressive increase in bird flu in chickens and ducks and turkeys in our country. And since then, you've seen it now go into a number of mammals. It's now in over 25 different mammals. I think now with the llamas recently, it's now in 27 mammals in the United States. Why is that important? Is we know exactly what has to happen for bird flu to be infectious for humans and go human to human. Scientists in 2012 actually did experiments in the lab using gain-of-function research, which I'm not in favor of, but the scientists did it, and they figured the 5 amino acids that have to change in a key receptor in order for bird flu to gain a propensity to bind to the human receptor and then be able to go human to human. Something that obviously happened with COVID, where COVID obviously learned how to use the ACE2 receptor in humans and then, of course, became a very infectious virus. I'm less concerned, though, that this will happen through spillover and evolution in animals. I'm much more concerned that this will happen in the laboratory through gain-of-function research.
Just want to point out, if you're hearing that rumble in the background, it's the one thing that we've got a giant rainstorm overhead. And apparently we have a bird flu storm over my shoulder here, so it all seems to fit. It is my honor and pleasure right now to be joined by Wolfgang Wodarg. Wolfgang, I was watching your face while you were watching that news piece, and I feel like we're aligned. It's like we're living in some sort of an insane cartoon. Am I wrong? Are they really doing this again?
They do it for almost 20 years now. I hear the same text again and again. I heard it from the WHO in 2005, and when the first birds flu alarm came, and I went to Geneva and I spoke with Mr. Stöhr, who was the director who was responsible in WHO for birds flu. He told us there will be 7 million dead in Germany, and he made a big alarm then. And afterwards, he was employed by Novartis for making vaccines. And so I followed all those people who are in this business. I know where they come together. They have clubs, and they collect dangerous viruses, sequences, and they make up their own stories, which have nothing to do with biology, which have nothing to do with our daily life and our contacts with microbes, which is very, very normal. We need microbes, we need viruses. They are everywhere. And we know our body, our immune system learns to live with them all our life. And this is, as they make it something very difficult. They are different. They make something, if you speak of a virus, they only speak of diseases. But a virus has nothing to do with diseases. There are viruses all around us all the time. And only if we are very weak, if we are not able to learn the new viruses, we are not able to meet them in a normal way, then maybe there are some symptoms and we get ill. And if you're very old, you may even die from it. Like we know there were people dying from flu, less than we always hear, but they because they have flu and then they get something else and they die from that, or they had some disease before and flu gives them the rest. So flu is there, influenza has been there, but is not as important as it was, as we were told the last 20 years.
I feel like the part of this story that is changing right before my eyes in science is the concept of natural immunity and really evolution, which is what you're alluding to. One of the things I say to people, I had a kid next to me on a plane recently that was wearing a mask. And I said, "Why are you wearing a mask?" Had to be like a 25-year-old young man. And he's like, "Well, I think I might have a cold and I don't want to spread it to you." I was like, "Well, if that's the case, don't worry about me. In fact, I want to make that contact." And I said, "Do you mind if I talk to you just for a moment? Because I think what you're doing is very dangerous for yourself." Now, to begin with, I don't think masks actually work, but I said, but let's just assume they do. Let's just say masks work. I said to him, you do realize that you are arresting your development, that you are hiding from a virus that our entire lives we have been evolving together. Every time the flu or coronavirus evolves, I catch it. Just a little bit, maybe if I caught it, I don't have quite the right antibodies to match up from the last time I had it. So I have a little bump, I have a little cold, and then I'm immune again. What you are doing is blocking yourself from evolving with this virus. And if you pull it off, you might get, so far behind that now, sort of like Native Americans with a smallpox or something they never came in contact with, you're just going to die when this thing finally slips through your mask because you didn't evolve with it. And I mean, I remember I saw him, it kind of sunk in, and luckily I fell asleep, and when I woke up 30 minutes later, his mask was off. But that's basically the problem here, right? Is that this idea that we no longer want to evolve and let our bodies go through this dance, if you will, with viruses and bacteria.
I just met a dentist, and he's very close to his patients, always, each day, many, many patients, in winter, in summer, all the time. He never had a cold the last 10 years, never he had a cold, not a single one, because he has a very well-trained immune system. Right. And when the old people, the grandfathers and grandmothers, when they are visited by their children or by their they have a training, they get training, and if you isolate the old people, they don't have training anymore. And if they then meet someone who has a lot of viruses to spread, maybe it's very hard to just to get along with that. They have to learn many new things then, and this may be too much. So isolating someone to protect from respiratory viruses makes no sense.
Right.
And I can also, the other thing is very important. There are vaccinations against respiratory viruses, the flu vaccination, them, and they were started when the flu was not important any longer, and they started giving us vaccination. There was a very big business idea, because then you can sell drugs to healthy people each year again. And if you don't have clinical results, because the clinical results you can make are only from the last year, they don't tell you anything for the next year.
Right.
Where you want to sell them. So it's a really, it's a business idea. It has nothing to do with health. And if you inject it into the muscle, this is not the place where the immune system normally gets to know the new viruses.
Right.
This happens in the mucosa of the respiratory tract, and there you learn the new viruses. So there may be even irritations. And if you have antibodies against, if you make antibodies against some influenza virus or some coronavirus or whatever, maybe you don't have this virus so much as you would have without the immunization. But then the other viruses come and they are happy, they have more space on your mucosa. We know, there's many research been done that people who get flu vax, that they don't get less ill than those who didn't. they only have different variety of viruses. And so I
Yeah.
think there is a lot of
And
business and a lot of fear mongering going on.
so a couple of details, because one of the things that's bothering me about this story is now in America we reported last week that we killed about 100 million chickens that the flocks tested positive for bird flu. So again, don't we really want those animals to develop their own immunity to this and kill it off dead? And when you're killing flocks that have it, you're taking away the flocks that within a few days, I'm assuming, are going to have developed immunity so that they can block whatever the next dangerous version is. We are literally eradicating the immunity that exists. Is that an accurate way to look at it?
Yeah, there is one thing, that factory farming provides a good breeding ground for
Mm.
all kinds of microorganisms. And under this condition, they multiply much faster than in nature.
Ah,
Small farms are much and have much smaller risks for an outbreak of infections. So this is what they don't want to hear. You know,
right.
they all want to make us buy from big firms, and they tell us we control it and we know what happens there because they have their own veterinaries. Yes, but it's much more risk for the cattle and for the chicken who are kept in such unnatural conditions.
Mm.
And I would be much more in favor if we had many farmers who have not so big stables and
Yeah.
who have their cattle, have their chicken, and who live healthy. Okay, but this is a different topic, has not. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's a really good point. Factory farming in every form, whether it's vegetables being sprayed with all kinds of herbicides and
Yes.
pesticides to try and increase yield, packing cows where there's no grass in sight, living on giant dirt heaps out in the sun, and chickens that never see the light of day. Of course, all of those sort of unnatural ways that we create our food are probably not helping us. There's a lot to get into in the history of this, but before we do, I have one other question about this, because as Robert Redfield, and the fear they put out there is that, if a bird flu, a pandemic, when the bird flu pandemic, that's how they're basically saying it. Not if, but when it happens, it could have a death rate between 30 and 50%. I mean, that is absolutely a massive number. I mean, we were promised, I think, 3 to 7%, which never happened with coronavirus, which they thought was enough to lock us down. Of course, it turned out to be about 0.3%, way off the mark, about a bad flu. But here's the point. I've talked to several scientists that say a virus with a death rate of 30 to 50% is going to have a very difficult time sweeping the world because it's going to kill its host. Do you
Yeah.
share that? Could you explain what they mean by that?
Yes, even if you have a gain of function virus, which is very dangerous, it won't be able to spread because it kills its host, and or even it lets them stay at home at least. And this is, for evolution of a virus, this is a nonsense. There is no chance. I'm not afraid of gain of function viruses. They use this gain of function to give us injections with parts of dangerous virus, and like through the needle they can spread the dangerous parts of their artificial viruses. This is possible, but in nature this is not possible. Don't be afraid of dangerous viruses. They are not able to spread. We have contact with many viruses, and those viruses who don't hurt us, who don't make us ill, they have the best chance to spread all over the world. But we live with them. They are our environment. They belong to our environment, and we learn from them. Our human that we are humans as we are, that we don't lay eggs anymore. We can say thank you to the viruses because they gave us all the genetic information that we could be successful in evolution. We need this contacts with this microbes, and our immune system is yes, trained to get along with them.
Could you take a moment, because you just said something that I'm sure a lot of people, and my audience is much different than the last time we spoke. we don't lay eggs anymore. I actually do remember discussing this with you before, but quickly, what did a virus have to do with, the human species, mammals not laying eggs? How did that work again?
When we have contacts with viruses, each virus is a package with genetic information. And sometimes this genetic information we meet in nature is stored in our genome. It's transcribed into our genome. And if it's good for us in evolution, we keep it. And and our body can use it, and it makes us stronger. And in our genome, you find many old viruses, the rests of old viruses. You can find them everywhere. There's a lot of research done on that. And whether those parts of our genome are used or are not used, this has to do with epigenetic processes, and this is very complicated. It has to do with many things which are not genetic, but which have to do with how we live and how we are stressed and what we do and so on.
So how did we go from leg A-ing through a virus into carrying the child in a womb?
Yes, there was some virus that was able to make the cells of the uterus, the internal cells of the uterus, the mucosa, tolerate a strange tissue, because the embryo has a different tissue than the mother has, a type of tissue, and there has to be some tolerance, and this tolerance was learned it was transported by viruses into the human being.
Wow, so they didn't have to protect it outside the body any longer in a shell. It's really,
Yes.
such fascinating. One of my favorite things in the work that we've done is how interesting all this science is. All right, I want to talk about your book then, really. You've looked at these sort of, fake pandemics. I feel like we all in coronavirus thought, well, this one isn't real, the other ones were, but now they're using this fear to create a fake pandemic. Many of the people watching this show, I believe, whether or not, I want to be careful to say, I believe, and there'll be some people who will argue even that watch this, that there was a coronavirus. I do believe it was deadly for a very small, specific group of people above the age of 70 or 80 that had other real susceptibilities, diabetes being a huge one, heart disease, things like that. So it did exist. It did, I guess, by the words pandemic, it did sort of cross borders, and a lot of people caught it. It wasn't the deadly thing that it was promised to be, but a pandemic happened. Well, do you agree with that? That's my version. Do you agree with that? Like, push back if I'm wrong.
Not at all.
Okay.
Not at all. No, because there is no pandemic, which is only killing people in New York, as it did in April in 2020.
Okay.
Why didn't nobody? They didn't die in San Francisco. If you see just the numbers of the people who died in hospital, there were many people dying in New York hospitals, but they didn't in San Francisco at the same time. And if you know how many people travel from one place to the other, and how 200 person in each plane, and there are thousands and millions of people each day traveling around the world, it's not possible that you only have a pandemic in northern Italy, in New York, in Madrid. It's not. It was a theater. They installed this. They made the pictures to frighten us, and they killed people in hospitals, treating them wrongly, and they killed people using overdose from hydroxychloroquine. They killed people with remdesivir. They
Yes.
killed them by putting them very early on ventilators. And so, but they didn't do it all over the world, only in some places. And there were the cameras, and they frighten us. And when I say, oh, this is not more than a normal flu, they always told me, oh, haven't you seen the pictures of northern Italy? And yes, I have seen. I've even spoken with doctors from there. And I was, after finding all this information, what was behind those people dying there and in New York. And it's so clear that there was nothing unusual. And you can see it if you see the cases of the normal monitoring of the normal monitoring institutions, like Robert Koch Institute, nothing happened. There were less cases of acute respiratory diseases, and there were no more cases of emergency with respiratory diseases in 2020. This, and not even in 2021, there was no emergency with respiratory case, but there was a high amount of emergencies with cardiac emergencies and with neurological emergencies after they started with those jabs. Then it started, but before there was nothing. So I didn't see any epidemiological evidence for some virus which was dangerous, more dangerous than any virus before in the flu seasons. And the other thing is that they only made the PCR test. They have forgotten to test the other viruses. They just didn't do it. You may have fever, you may have a cough, you may have even a pneumonia, and the PCR test for COVID is positive. But it's not that. It's only the PCR test. You are ill because you have an influenza, but nobody looks at it anymore.
Right.
This is what happened all the time.
Well, that was that weird phenomenon that there was no flu, right? That it was all that they were saying coronavirus seems to have erased the flu.
Yes. You only find what you're looking for. And this is what they do now. You know, if you are a farmer now, you have a farm, you have cattle, and they come for your cows to make a PCR test, I say beware of them. Get rid of them as soon as possible. They may even carry those molecules that they're looking for with a PCR test on their clothes because they come from another stable and they come from a chicken place or something. You know, if your cows are healthy and you don't see any sign of a disease, don't let them do a PCR test. It's nonsense. The PCR test was invented for clean room controlling, clean room, with no molecules at all. And Karimali, he invented it for that. And it was not invented to find some disease or to distinguish the diseases. As a last, you can use the PCR when you have a diagnosis and when you want to know some subtype of the germ you're looking for, of the microbe you're looking for. If you know already what's going on, then it may give you some information which is useful. But if you're looking for cases for some disease, the PCR test is a lie, is a big betrayal, and we should not allow it to be done anymore for this purpose. It should not be allowed to look for cases. It's a medical sin, a very big sin. And all the doctors who follow this advice and who use a PCR test to find cases, they do wrong. They frighten people. It's not necessary. And all those consequences from the administration coming afterwards, it's horrible what they do. Don't use PCR tests for finding cases. Look whether the people or whether the cattle or whether there is some big cases of illness, and then you can find out the differential diagnosis and you make a real diagnosis. You look for all germs possible and you look for intoxication, which is possible also as a reason. And then you can use a PCR test at the end perhaps to find out the details, but not for looking for cases. This is just a big, big betrayal, and we already get a little bit used to it because they did it with the birds flu. They started it with the birds flu in 2005.
Yeah.
Then already with Mr. Drosten, he started it with SARS-1. SARS-1 was detected by a PCR test. Before, the Chinese didn't know which microbes it might have been. But then Mr. Drosten came with his PCR test and said, it is SARS-1. I have a question. Where was SARS-1 all those 20 years in between? Where were those beta coronaviruses? Did they just vanish? Did they just disappear?
Right.
Nobody was looking for them anymore. It's just a story. It was a story with SARS-1. It was a story with the birds flu 1. It was a story with the swine flu. It's always the same. And I'm almost laughing, because they always use a PCR test. I have a picture in my slides where you see the skin of ill people. Can you show this?
Do we have the slide with the skin? Let's see if we can bring that up. There we go. Is that?
I have it because it's a quiz.
Is it the Mpox? Can you see that? We've got
yes. Yes, and my question is, which of them are
Oh,
mpox,
oh, which one of them
monkeypox?
is? Or let me see. Which one is the empire? I mean, uh,
This is six photos from the British Health
yeah,
Service,
yeah,
and I could use them. But which one is the monkeypox?
yeah. I wouldn't know.
I can tell. I can tell you each of them if the PCR test is positive.
Oh yeah, they
That's
all
it.
are. Got it.
No, there are so many different reasons why they have such skin diseases. But if the PCR test is positive, for sure they say it's monkeypox. This is how it goes.
Wow. Um, so then what how is it? Here's the problem you have is then people say, so it's a giant lie, story, fraud. Why do so many doctors go along with it? So many scientists going along with it. My question to you would be, and like Robert Redfield's there, he's been somewhat honest about parts of it. Do they believe it? I mean, is are they just lying to themselves? Or do they know what they're doing? Is everyone a cog in this giant lie? Or is it they hand you a test that tells you what you think you're seeing and everyone's in a, in a matrix, if you will?
If you do something wrong, it's very difficult to find out that you do something wrong when your success and when your income is dependent on that you don't
Ah,
see it.
right, right.
If you
I
won't
think
get, you
is
won't
that
have a
Upton
career.
Sinclair, right? Said that something like that. Like it's
Yes,
hard to convince someone that's
yes,
made a mistake
yes,
if recognizing it would have an effect on their salary.
exactly.
Yeah,
It has to do with your career. It has to do with the money you earn, and they have learned from the first time they did it with SARS-1. They didn't try out to spread it so much, but then with the bird flu they already tried. Mr. Rumsfeld, he earned a lot of money with that. And
yeah,
then with the swine flu, there was Glaxo, there was Novartis. They were all producing vaccines already, but the doctors didn't use the vaccine so much. In Germany, they bought more than 60. They ordered 60 million doses, but the doctors only used 4 million. So the doctors were skeptic. There was a discussion still, and in the
yeah.
meantime, they have learned how to persuade the doctors to follow them. They have occupied many of the publication organs of
Right.
medical of science. You know,
Well,
I
I
just
mean, when I
saw
think about
an
it,
advertising.
you could take any. I could make up, right. And so I guess to your point, I could make up and say people are dying of a cold right now or RSV. Here's what we do: we got to get you in the hospital. We got to test you. If you test positive, you need to go on a
Yes,
ventilator. We need to give you a
yes,
deadly failed cancer drug or Ebola drug. I think it was remdesivir. And look, at 9 out of 10 of you are dying. I mean, that's basically
yes.
what happened.
This this is how they can do it, and you can, if you invent some new story like that, it is not a new story. It has always been the same like that. They always did it like that.
It's so has
They
there ever been a
didn't do
real
it.
pandemic? Has there been a real pandemic in your mind since you wrote the book?
No, no. There were weak people in the Second World War. The people had bad conditions in Europe and everywhere where the war was. And now, still in those regions where people are hungry, where they don't have where they don't have good apartments and where they don't have good food, they have a weak immune system, and many people can die and starve, and they are more apt to get infection, much more, and they die much more from infections. But in Europe after 1950 or 1960, we were all so healthy. We had enough food. We had too much food even. But you know that even the diseases of children, they were gone. They had no complications anymore. If you got measles or if you got some children
Right.
diseases, there were no complications anymore. And then they started giving us the vaccines and advising us when they said, yes, it's the vaccine. We have had big victory and we fought the disease, but they didn't. The disease was gone when we had a good life. And they were just earning money with this fear mongering, and they are still doing it, and they make it more and more perfect. And I saw an advertising of a a doctor's chamber of medicines in Austria, and they were saying, "Oh, we give us some education. There will be a professor coming from a high school, and she will tell us how to emphatically, how with all your heart, how you can tell the people that they really need vaccines." And this teacher there, I looked where she published, and she published in some journals which were owned by some how are they called, those firms who make your products being sold very well,
Right.
such a public relation firm. And
Right.
they had this scientific journal. The public relations firm made a scientific journal, and they gave a chance to young scientists to publish there. And this is,
Wow.
it's a world that's lived from money, and it's only fed by money, and it's only the whole, if you the science is there to find out what we call knowledge.
As a
And
scientist, I
knowledge
mean,
is,
yeah, when you're, sorry to interrupt, have you always been here? I mean, you're listed as a virologist. Did you once believe in vaccines? Or did you always, from the beginning,
yes,
were you always skeptical?
yeah, no, I was a director of a public health institution in northern Germany, and I had a doctor in my team, and he was specialized on pediatrics, and he was going from schools and to schools and kindergartens and giving the vaccines. When he started that he wanted to give the vaccine against hepatitis B, I said no. So it was after some years, I understood what was going on when they widened the scope of all those possibilities they had to give us jabs against all those children diseases. But hepatitis B was not a disease I thought that was dangerous for children, and not hepatitis A, neither. And there are so many diseases the children get to know, and they don't get ill from it.
So that kind of
And there's
started
no risk because you have,
that started
yeah.
your look into, wait a minute, maybe this is more of a
Yes,
marketing ploy than a
yes.
health
And
system.
I had some struggle with my colleagues with this already when I was a director. We had lots of discussions, and yeah, then I went to politics, and I started to fight there for good medicine. But there were many interests in politics too, and I saw how the lobby is much stronger than the voice of the people, because the lobby is much closer to the politicians, and there are the parties which are between the people and the politician,
Right.
and their representatives. And the parties, you just bribe the parties. You don't need to bribe the single parliamentarian anymore. So it's a very, very complicated situation, and we have what we experience now is that we have an institutional corruption. I was working for Transparency International for 10 years till I found out that this organization also is corrupt. And so I got problems there when I spoke about that. And but I think when I worked there, I found out that it's much more efficient when you bribe the boss, or when you buy the whole institution, when you make a public-private partnership because then when you have a public-private partnership, you have the experts on the private side. You have the people from the administration who think the private side knows it better, and they have their expert, they have their scientists, and they come with their scientists, and they pay their scientists, and they tell the institution what is the best thing to do. And afterwards, the tail is waving with the dog.
Right. Unbelievable. And so you've seen all sides of
And
this. Yeah. Um,
this is the most efficient way to corrupt. Institutional corruption is the cheapest way and the most efficient. And if you have the global leaders, you have them all.
it does seem dire. And I got back from Geneva and sort of was fairly alarmist with my audience. And I don't like being that way. I think we've got to understand that we are powerful. A lot of this is happening because we've lost touch with how powerful we are. The fact that we outnumber
Yes.
all of these people. Are they going? I mean, what's amazing to me is really as we know, a bird flu hasn't successfully jumped into human beings and spread since the dawn of man. It's like saying that, an earthquake that could come in the next 500 years is definitely coming in the next 4 months. I mean, that's how insane
Yeah.
this media
If
is.
you need it, if you
Yeah,
need it for you
yeah,
need it for stock exchange. The pandemic waves, you can see them, and they show us the pre-pandemic phase and the pandemic phase, and then after inter-pandemic phase, and you see parallel to it, you see the stock exchange, you see the waves there. You see
yeah.
it climbing and they sell it when it's down. They buy it when it's down, and they sell it when it's up. So they make their own waves on the stock exchange they are riding on. And this is what we experience now. We have all those drugs being prepared now against the bird's flu for more than 2 years already. We have RNA, and they try to have this cheap production of jabs against the bird's flu again. They try to kill us again because it's experimental, and our body will not tolerate being genetically modified to produce some vaccines ourselves. It's
Right,
not what our cells are used to.
right. Um, if I was to hand you $100 and say, I want you to bet on whether or not is there going to be a bird flu pandemic this year or not? I mean, however they're going to go about it, where would you put your bet right now? Are they crazy enough to attempt to do this all over again within this year?
No, I don't think so. I think there will be many people just laughing. This is the soundest reaction when you see all this. Just laugh at them. Stand at the street and laugh. The king is, or the Caesar is naked.
Right,
They have nothing on. They are naked, and we have to laugh at them. It's horrible what they do. They don't have new ideas. They just try to perpetuate their waves, and they're trying to earn some more money. And I think it's very important that we think, why do they do it? Why do they do it? And I think Catherine Austin Fitz has a good explanation for all this. It has to do something with the currency, has to do something with the dollars, has to do something with all this. And we have to look behind it, and we have to think what we can do in future, that there is no incentive to do all this nonsense with us, to kill people. Horrible. They kill people because they want to save the dollar. I don't know it's horrible what they do. It's criminal.
yes, I agree. For people that want to see the work that you're doing, read your book, do you have a website? Do you have somewhere where we can follow what you're doing?
Yes, I have a very big website for all those years now. It is just my name, wodarg.com, and www.wodarg.com. And there you can, it's not very, I do it myself, and I don't have a staff to do it, and you have to look a little bit, but you can search for terms and you find what you're looking for. It's
Okay.
in many languages. It's some English stuff too, and French, and whatever you need. So
Um, Wolfgang, I have to say you're a breath of fresh air. It's great to reflect with you again. I remember how much clarity you brought during the COVID, theater, as you call it. Keep up the great work. Thank you for reminding us to laugh. Uh, they're just a bunch
yeah,
of fools. We're not stupid enough to do that again. I agree with you.
I am.
Yeah.
I made some songs about COVID, yeah, but they are in German. So uh, yeah, I make poems and songs, and I think it's a good way. We need more songs mocking them and showing them that they're naked. I think it would be good.
Very good. Well, we need to get this translated. We'll get them out, and we'll release the album right here at ICANN. Wolfgang
One
Wodarg.
song is who who killed grandma is one song which tells a story of grandma being killed by those people.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a horrible story. We need indictments. I'm not going to walk away. We are finally having the right types of hearings are going on here in America. I'm concerned that, the wrong person elected here in America could shut down those hearings because I think we do have enough politicians starting to wake up. We've had over 25 attorney generals speaking out against the WHO, the WEF, on that front, does that mean just really? I know I was going to let you go, but the WHO, boy, they seem to be trying to grab a lot of power right now with these treaties and everything. What are your thoughts on WHO right now? What do we do?
Uh, they were made a very important institution because they set norms in medicine. They even define the diseases we speak about. All diseases we deal with are defined by WHO with the ICD. And if they just define a new disease like they did with COVID-19, they said this is COVID-19 is the case when the PCR test is positive. This is COVID-19 virus identified. And they even made a definition, COVID-19 virus not identified, when you had some snotty nose and you had contact with someone where the PCR test was positive. This was made by WHO, and those cases they defined were counted all the time. It's ridiculous what they did, but they do it. And they do it with many diseases. They have a big power because they define what is a pandemic, how to find it. When they say you find the pandemic when you use the PCR, the whole world will start. And now they even start examining the sewage. And they look for viruses in the sewage. And in the sewage you find anything, anytime. You
Right.
can, there's not only the human excretion, there is also from birds, from dogs, from cats. It's all mixture. You find anything in the sewage, and they seriously monitor it. It's ridiculous what they do. I am a specialist for hygiene. I was planning sewage how it
Systems, like,
the system, yes,
yeah.
and I was controlling them, and I know what's going on there. But it's horrible how they misuse this PCR test now. And even if they make the sequencing lives from computer software. They live from pieces of you find with PCR. They put together some patchwork, and then you have some software, and you make some alignment, and then you construct some new virus, and they discuss which is the real one. So this has nothing to do with biology. It's just the game with molecules they play in their computers, and they use such PCR tests, and they find some similarities, they find some similar variations, but it has nothing to do with diseases, nothing.
Wow, amazing stuff. I want to thank you for taking the time to join us today, Wolfgang. Very enlightening. You've inspired me to inspire a little bit more humor back into this conversation before we all lose our minds and start taking it all too seriously. I look forward to having you back sometime in the future. Keep up the great work. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me in the show.
You bet. Take care.